Top of the morning, everyone. This is Scott with LightWav.io. We're very excited about this particular product. It's a whole room ambient lighting music visualizer that's plug and play simple. You just plug in an audio cable and it works. The device can be configured in place for your particular venue to provide the intended ambience. Here we're just going to run through how the product works. So here we're going to start at our introductory screen here, and we're going to just start with the colors. You'll notice that the color palette I have available matches the output colors of the LEDs currently. Now these can be changed to any color you want, anything in the RGB spectrum here. What we're going to do to start though is I'm going to load up a settings file that I already have saved. So this is just kind of a reggae color mix, so I just have the red, yellow, and green. I chose these colors just because we'll keep it simple to start, and that way you'll be able to see what sort of changes I'm making more easily. So you can see already that as I change the colors here, that's also going to change the colors of the actual music visualizations here. Now I'm going to head over to my frequency amplifier here, and you'll notice that I can actually turn frequencies on or off, or I can scale them anywhere between this. And you'll notice as I drop down the amplitude of all these different frequencies, I'm left with the only one that's left, or this is the bass, the low notes. And as you can see, I've already designated these colors with red. So now you can only see the red. I went ahead and turned the yellow back on, and that's going to give us the mids. So I'm going to make this a little more clear now. I'm going to turn down most of the mids, most of the basses, and most of the highs, and then we'll be able to see a little more individual frequencies a little more clearly. So this gives you the ability to sort of emphasize particular colors, emphasize particular frequencies, and you can do this for whatever you desire for your particular venue. Now here I went ahead and moved on to the output phase. What the phase is going to do is it allows you to control how big each color is, and of course when I mention a color, that color corresponds to an input frequency. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the greens back off so you can see what I'm doing here a little more clearly. Now as I adjust the phase shift of these particular frequencies, you'll notice that the output lights get bigger or smaller. All right, and now another feature here is that I can do a phase shift so that I can actually move the colors along the LEDs here. That way, if I have two separate colors that are around the same output size, I can offset one of them in any shift that you desire, and that way you don't have these colors overriding each other. And so that way you can definitely bring out the colors that you want in your particular venue here. So here I'm just going to mess around with the phase shift a little bit more, and then you can kind of see what effects this has as I toy around with some of these settings. Now another interesting feature here that we can do is that we can change the color mix mode. So all different colors from all input frequencies are being fed into these LEDs, which is only one dimension. So there has to be some sort of strategy for what lights we're going to decide are the dominant ones. Now, the color mix mode I've been using has been overwrite by brightest color per pixel, so I'll go into that. I just introduced the mix mode. What this is going to do is actually going to merge the colors together entirely. If I overwrite by the highest frequency, this is going to take the highest pitch element of your song, and that's going to become your dominant frequency. And if I overwrite by the lowest frequency, that's going to be opposite. So if you have a club where you have a lot of bass that you really want to emphasize, you can make that the predominant color here. As I move on, I can also overwrite by the highest phase. Now this is a little less likely to be used, but that option is available to you. So this will ensure that if you determine the phase for your overwrite strategy, that's going to make the larger lights or the lighter lights more dominant, respectively. Now if I overwrite by amplitude, what this is going to do is it's simply going to accentuate the most dominant elements in the song or audio that you're currently playing. So whatever input frequency ends up being loudest and the most dominant, that corresponding color will win out in the overwrite strategy here for lighting. Now the final color mix mode that I'm going to go into is the overwrite by brightest color per pixel. This is the color mode that we've been using, and I think this is actually the most straightforward. This will simply output all of the lights, and whichever ones are brightest on a per frequency basis, that's the light that's going to hit the LED. Now we can move along here and we can actually adjust the sensitivity for both loudness and pitch. So if we adjust the loudness sensitivity, what this is going to do is it's going to adjust how bright or dim the lights get in response to the loudness of the input song. So basically, the louder the sensitivity you have, the more you're going to get that flashy effect. So you can turn that down, and that way your lights are going to be a little more subtle. Maybe you don't want your lights to be, you want them more in the background, so you can adjust, or you can decrease the loudness sensitivity rather. Now this also goes along lines with the dimmer as well. So if we're not at a club, we just want some background lighting, we can also just turn the lights way down so that the lights aren't in your face, but it's enough to just provide some nice ambiance here. And then I should also point out that in this particular demo, we can physically see the individual LEDs. Ideally, in an actual production setup, we would want to hide the LEDs as much as possible, and so you're really only going to get that nice ambient lighting. Okay, so now let's go ahead and take a gander at what these lights look like under a much more dim setting. Okay, so we'll go and turn the dimmer back up so our lights are back bright again, and then we'll demonstrate another small feature here is that we can also adjust the pitch sensitivity. Now what this is going to do is it's going to influence how much the pitch of the input audio affects the stretchiness of our lights. So as we decrease the pitch sensitivity, that's generally going to make all these light waves bigger, and it's also going to make them expand and stretch less strongly, we'll say. Okay, so now if we go back here, I should also mention then, if we're talking about the length of the light waves, we can also adjust the output phase of every individual color. So this is how you can control how a color is more dominant or less dominant, or how you can actually map a color very distinctly to a particular frequency. Generally by making your higher pitched colors higher phase, and that way the actual light wave is smaller. Okay, now back to the phase shift. We did discuss this a little bit, but what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to offset all of these different colors, and that way we can try and spread them out as much as possible. And now we can kind of see what that effect ends up looking like here. Okay, so now I also want to go ahead and show, now that we've gone through all that whole gambit, I want to show that we can also just easily load up a new configuration setting. So in your particular venue, let's say you could put together a visualization for rap songs, you could have a separate visualization for jazz songs. Obviously we're not trying to create the same mood, and so that way you can pre-configure different settings, download those, and then upload those back into the device. Okay, so now we've just gone back to a very colorful palette. What I'm going to try to do here is just spread everything out just a little bit, so that way everything, or at least we can kind of see what this looks like when we have a high variance of colors, high variance of phases, and so forth. Alright, now the last feature I should talk about here is the minimum light threshold. So what this means is that a certain A certain amplitude of an input frequency must be satisfied in order to generate a light wave. But if we increase that threshold, that's going to make it harder for a sound to reach the threshold of being able to be displayed. So basically what this means in plain terms, that if we increase the threshold here, it's going to make our visualizations look a lot more crisp. But of course the downside of that is that you get more of that strobe and flashy effect, which perhaps you don't actually want.